If you're seeing this right before midnight, consider it a quiet summons. Not from me, but from the part of you that has been watching all day, the steady observer behind your eyes. Tonight isn't about fixing your life in 45 seconds. It's about recognizing the single hinge your entire reality swings on, the way you look at what you're living. The field isn't grading your beliefs, your to-do list, or your willpower. It's listening to your state, and in the minutes before the clock resets, your state becomes a doorway. Most of us treat midnight like a finish line, but it's closer to a mirror. In that thin interval, time takes a breath. There's a subtle quiet where the world seems to lean in and ask, "Are you here?" If you meet that question with presence, something reorganizes. Lights feel a shade crisper, sounds separate from the static, and your own breath becomes an anchor instead of an afterthought. This is the observer effect, translated into lived experience. Not an equation, but a felt pivot where attention touches reality, and reality changes its posture. You've been trained to hunt for signals in the noise, notifications, headlines, half-finished conversations, the echo of what someone thought about you. But the real signal hides in the gap you keep skipping. The gap between your inhale and exhale. The gap between impulse and action. The gap between a thought and the moment you choose to believe it. Tonight's test is simple. Can you notice the gap and stand on its riverbank instead of being swept by its current? If you can, you'll watch the water without drowning in it. If you can't, you'll call the river me and repeat tomorrow what today already rehearsed. Here's how the loop sustains itself. A trigger appears. Your breath tightens. Meaning snaps into place. Action follows. Evidence confirms the story. The story feeds the next trigger. Round and round. None of this makes you wrong. It makes you unobserved. The loop relies on your absence, on your attention collapsing into the first interpretation it sees. But when the observer steps in, the same trigger becomes a bell. Breath widens, meaning softens. Action slows. Evidence opens. The world doesn't flip, it unlocks. Right before midnight, there is usually one moment, maybe half a heartbeat, when you feel the room pause with you. If you're attentive, it's unmistakable. The background hum comes forward. Your chest remembers space, and the edges of things look less like borders and more like invitations. That's coherence beginning. Not perfection, not performance, just alignment between what you sense, what you feel, and how you choose. You don't need special words. You need honest noticing. The field reads that honesty like a tuning fork. So this is the ask, and it's the whole test. When the minute hand hesitates near 12, let your eyes soften and register the one who is registering. Keep your breath oval and unforced, as if you're tracing a circle on still water. Do nothing dramatic. Just witness the mind name what's happening and let the naming pass like clouds across a wide, clear sky. You are the sky. The clouds are weather. Weather changes. The sky remains. A brief note for clarity and care. What you'll hear in this series is educational and contemplative, only bridges for perception, not medical advice or prescriptions. Use what resonates, set down what doesn't, and treat your body and nervous system with gentleness. If you already work with a professional for your well-being, let these reflections be complementary, not competitive. Now, one breath together. In, a quiet doorway. Out, a quiet decision. If you felt even a small click of stillness, you're ready. In the next part, I'll show you why your reality keeps looping, how the trigger breath, meaning action evidence chain, runs on autopilot, and exactly where your awareness can enter to change the story without force. You wake up, and the loop begins. The same thoughts, the same pace, the same sense that you're running slightly behind something invisible. You check the time, check the messages, check yourself against a day you haven't yet lived. By the third breath after waking, the loop has already written its script for you. The quantum field doesn't trap you, your perception does. It's not punishment, it's programming. A sequence so practiced that it no longer asks for permission. Here's the quiet mechanism behind it. A trigger appears, maybe an email, a tone in someone's voice, a memory disguised as a feeling. Your breath changes first. Shallow, quick, invisible to thought but loud to the field. That shift in breath alters your state. Your state colors your meaning. Meaning fuels your action. Action gathers evidence. And that evidence feeds the story that began with the breath. It's a perfect feedback loop, a closed ecosystem of perception pretending to be reality. You think you're responding to the world, but you're only responding to your own interpretation of it. Every sensory input travels through the filters of your memory, your identity, your unexamined expectations. The world you experience isn't the world as it is, it's the world as you are. When your attention fuses completely with what you perceive, observation collapses into identification. The wave becomes a particle. You become the story, and the story, like all self-contained systems, repeats itself until someone remembers to step outside of it. That's why change feels temporary. You try new habits, new affirmations, new routines, yet something subtle pulls you back. The loop doesn't care what you do, it cares where you observe from. If the observer remains unconscious, every new action eventually decays into the old pattern. It's not failure, it's physics. Observation creates collapse. Unobserved attention collapses the same probability over and over again. Imagine driving the same road each morning. At first, you notice the trees, the turns, the light. After a few weeks, the drive vanishes into habit. You arrive without remembering the journey. That's your consciousness most of the time. On autopilot, recreating yesterday under the illusion of motion. The universe keeps offering new routes, but your mind keeps selecting repeat last destination. You call it normal life. The field calls it unobserved coherence energy, circling without expansion. The first symptom of the loop is numbness. You stop feeling your breath. You stop noticing transitions. You speak from reactions instead of responses. You confuse thought for truth. Every trigger feels like proof of something outside your control. The field mirrors that perception faithfully, arranging matter to confirm your state. Not because it's cruel, but because that's how observation works. It reflects what it's shown. When you believe your thoughts completely, they harden into architecture. They become walls around perception, so seamless that you forget the sky exists beyond them. Each belief filters light until you only see what matches your conclusion. The mind calls this safety. The soul calls it captivity. The observer effect hides in plain sight here. Every interpretation you defend reshapes the world to defend you back. The perceptual crisis isn't the storm in your life. It's mistaking the storm for yourself. You've been weather for so long you forgot you were sky. The loop feeds on your forgetfulness. It uses familiarity as camouflage. It feels safer to replay pain you know than to face stillness you don't. But the moment you witness this mechanism, the trigger, the breath, the meaning, the action, the evidence, you create a fracture in the loop. That fracture is the first glimpse of freedom. Here's what most people miss. You don't need to destroy the loop. You need to observe it without collapsing into it. The loop is sustained by unconscious observation. It dissolves under conscious awareness. The field doesn't punish mistakes. It simply amplifies coherence. When you notice yourself tightening, rushing, defending, you're already outside the pattern. The noticing itself is the correction. Right now, test this. Recall a recent moment that felt repetitive, an argument, a disappointment, a self-criticism. Revisit it in slow motion. Where did your breath change? What meaning rushed in before awareness arrived? That breath was the ignition. If you can find it, you can change the current. Awareness at the breath is awareness at creation. This is the perceptual crisis, living so inside your stories that you forget you're the storyteller. But once you realize you've been both actor and audience, you can step into the third seat, the observer. That's where transformation begins. In the next part, we'll explore the quantum idea not as theory, but as an emotional language. You'll feel what the observer effect truly means, how attention becomes architecture, how coherence feels inside the body, and why the moment you watch yourself is the moment the field begins to listen. The observer effect isn't just physics, it's the heartbeat of consciousness. When a physicist says that observation changes the behavior of particles, what they're really describing is intimacy. The universe responds to being seen, and so do you. When your awareness rests on something, an idea, a wound, a possibility, it begins to organize around that focus. The particles of your inner and outer world rearrange to reflect the quality of your seeing. Think of it this way. Every emotion you feel is a kind of frequency, a texture in the field. Fear collapses potential into protection. Gratitude expands it into connection. Attention is the hand shaping clay, and emotion is the warmth that makes it pliable. You've been sculpting reality every moment of your life, not through force, but through focus. Yet most people focus by default, pouring awareness into worry, doubt, or comparison. They don't realize those feelings are the brushstrokes painting their experience. When you observe through judgment, you create interference like static, disrupting a radio signal. But when you observe through presence, something remarkable happens: coherence. In physics, coherence describes particles vibrating in harmony. In lived experience, it feels like peace. Thoughts slow, breath deepens, time opens. You stop pushing, and life begins to move with you. This is where the emotional layer of quantum reality reveals itself. The field doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you feel you are. Every coherent feeling is like a clear frequency the field can match. Every incoherent feeling is a mixed signal, canceling itself out. That's why sometimes your intentions don't manifest even though you think positively. The words might be hopeful, but the body's broadcasting fear. The field listens to the whole transmission. You've experienced this without calling it quantum. Think of a day when you felt light, effortless, connected, curious. Everything seemed to align. Green lights, kind faces, conversations that just worked. Then recall a day when you were anxious or rushed. The same world felt heavy, resistant, filled with minor obstacles. The outer circumstances changed less than your frequency did. You were the observer, shifting the probability of ease or friction. That is the observer effect made human. You don't need equations to understand it. You need stillness. When your mind quiets and your breath softens, you begin to sense what mystics and scientists both point toward. Awareness and reality are in constant conversation. Each moment is a negotiation between possibility and perception. Coherence feels like being aligned with the current instead of fighting it. You're still rowing, but the river helps. You speak, and the right words emerge without planning. You listen, and meaning arrives without effort. The field becomes a partner, not an opponent. You begin to trust that awareness isn't passive, it's participatory. The act of noticing is creation. In this light, emotion isn't weakness, it's information. It tells you how aligned your observation is. Peace signals coherence. Tension signals resistance. There's no punishment in that feedback, only guidance. When you learn to read your emotional field the way sailors read the wind, you stop forcing the sails and start adjusting to the flow. Here's a subtle truth. Observation is love wearing the disguise of attention. To truly observe something without trying to change it is the purest form of acceptance. That acceptance stabilizes the field. When you observe your thoughts or emotions without judgment, they settle naturally, like sediment sinking in clear water. Coherence emerges not from control, but from compassion. The observer effect is not about becoming detached. It's about becoming intimate with existence without grasping at it. You notice the dance and realize you are both dancer and witness. Each breath, each blink, each heartbeat is a quantum event collapsing into form through your awareness. The field isn't somewhere out there. It's the space between your inhale and your next thought. When you feel coherence, you feel truth. It isn't loud or dramatic. It's the quiet certainty that what you're sensing and what reality is becoming are finally the same. You no longer seek signs, they appear naturally. You no longer chase, meaning it arises on its own. That's the observer effect as a lived frequency. Stillness that shapes without forcing, awareness that creates without claiming. And as ancient traditions knew long before physics caught up, this coherence is a sacred mirror. In the next part, we'll cross that bridge into Egypt's temples and the Buddhist breath to see how the ancients mapped the same phenomenon in symbols, myths, and metaphors. They didn't call it quantum mechanics. They called it awakening. Long before we had words like quantum, there were temples that taught through silence. In Egypt, disciples of Ma'at gathered beneath columns carved with stars to study the balance between order and chaos. They believed every act, every thought, every breath had weight, a frequency that either upheld harmony or disturbed it. They called it the feather test. When your heart became lighter than the feather of truth, you passed through the gate. When heavier, you repeated the cycle, not as punishment, but as refinement. You see, The Egyptians were describing what we now call coherence. The feather of Ma'at wasn't morality, it was alignment. A heart weighed down by resentment or fear could not rise. It oscillated too chaotically to pass through the higher frequency of balance. Their temples were laboratories of perception. At dawn, initiates would stand in still water, watching their reflections ripple. When their breath wavered, the image broke. When their breath stilled, the image cleared. They were learning to stabilize the field through observation, to keep awareness steady enough that reality could mirror truth without distortion. As above, so below, they said. But the hidden line that followed was, as within, so without. Buddhist monks would later translate the same law into the simplicity of a breath. In Anapanasati, the mindfulness of inhalation and exhalation, the practitioner watches air enter and leave without interference. The purpose isn't control, it's intimacy. As the breath steadies, the mind's ripples settle. The self dissolves into pure witnessing. Here too, coherence arises, an effortless synchronization between awareness and existence. When the breath and observation become one, the illusion of separation fades. Across the desert of Egypt and the monasteries of Burma runs the same thread. Awareness alters the field, whether framed as heart and feather, sky and cloud, or wave and observer. The teaching points toward one realization: the universe mirrors your state, not your statements. The ancients didn't need equations, they had metaphor. And metaphor, when lived, becomes technology. Consider the tree of life in Kabbalistic mysticism. Its branches represent the manifest world, its roots, the hidden source. Energy flows between them through 10 spheres, or sephirot, each one a different frequency of consciousness from material form at the base to pure awareness at the crown. The journey upward wasn't physical, it was perceptual. You ascended the tree not by climbing, but by refining your awareness, by observing your thoughts and emotions until they harmonized with the divine rhythm. Every act of seeing clearly lifted you higher. Each of these traditions speaks the same quiet language: breath, balance, and the observer as bridge. The Egyptians weighed the heart. The Buddhists watched the breath. The Kabbalists climbed the inner tree. All were practicing the same experiment. What happens to reality when I become still enough to witness it without resistance? To them, observation was prayer. It wasn't a petition for something to happen. It was communion with what already is. They knew the act of seeing with reverence changes what's seen. When the priest faced the rising sun, he wasn't worshiping a star. He was aligning with the field of renewal that the sun symbolized. When the monk counted breaths, he wasn't escaping the world, he was measuring the heartbeat of the cosmos within himself. This is why ancient temples were designed with intentional acoustics, proportions, and light. Each chamber tuned the initiate's body to vibrate in coherence with universal patterns. They were teaching what the quantum field whispers now. Coherence is the key that opens every door. Stillness isn't emptiness, it's resonance. And though centuries separate us from those rituals, the bridge remains intact. Every time you pause between breaths, you enter the same sacred architecture. Your chest becomes the temple. Your breath, the sacred wind. Your awareness, the eternal flame. The ancients might say, you're standing at the threshold of the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber where the divine and human meet. In a few moments, we'll translate these symbols back into direct experience. You'll learn a practice that doesn't belong to any religion, but to the physics of presence itself. A way to breathe, observe, and re-enter coherence, safely, gently, wherever you are. Remember, this is not medical instruction. It's a contemplative exercise meant to restore awareness, not replace care. Now close your eyes, not as withdrawal but as alignment. Imagine the feather of Ma'at resting in your palm. As you inhale, the heart rises toward balance. As you exhale, the weight of the day releases. Feel that space where air pauses, the silence of Ra, the still point the Buddha called the middle way, the crown of the tree where everything connects. That's where we're going next. Into practice, where theory becomes breath and observation becomes creation. Let's move from idea to embodiment. What you're about to do is simple, yet precise. It's not a breathing technique to control the body. It's a way to meet awareness through the body. You can do this seated, lying down, or standing. Wherever you are, make sure you feel safe. This is an educational, contemplative exercise, not a replacement for medical or therapeutic care. You're not fixing yourself. You're remembering yourself. Begin by noticing the place where your body meets the surface beneath it. The ground is holding you, whether you notice it or not. Feel that support for a moment. Let it remind you that you don't have to hold everything together. The field is already doing that. Now, bring your attention to your breath. Don't deepen it, don't analyze it, just watch it arrive. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth softly, as if you were fogging glass. The goal is not perfection, it's intimacy with the moment. Here's the first micro-protocol, the observer breath. Step 1. Inhale and silently say, I am aware. Step 2. Exhale and silently say, of awareness itself. Do that 3 times. Each time, feel the space around your chest widen a little, not because you're forcing expansion, but because observation opens space naturally. Step 3. Between breaths, notice the gap. Don't rush to fill it. That tiny pause is where the quantum field listens. In that still instant, nothing is demanded, yet everything is possible. You're not trying to enter a mystical state. You're simply noticing how the body and awareness synchronize when you stop interfering. Now, scan gently from the top of your head down to your feet. Wherever you sense tension, meet it with breath, not resistance. When the shoulders lift with stress, let your exhale become a soft release, as if melting that armor with warmth. If emotions rise, treat them like weather patterns passing through an infinite sky. You don't need to name them or fix them, just let them move. Observation is already transformation. Here's the second micro-protocol, coherence alignment. Inhale for a slow count of 4, hold for 1, exhale for 5. The slight lengthening of the exhale signals safety to your nervous system. It tells your inner world, the storm has passed. After a few cycles, you may feel subtle coherence, a sensation of internal rhythm syncing with something larger, like waves matching the tide. As this coherence builds, awareness begins to spread beyond the body. You might sense space itself breathing with you. The room's edges feel softer. Sounds organize into harmony rather than distraction. That's the field, mirroring your state. Don't chase the sensation, receive it. You are not entering the field, you are remembering that you are the field observing itself. Now comes the daily integration. These are small gateways you can use anywhere. Before opening a door, pause, inhale, exhale. Step through with awareness crossing thresholds, consciously trains the mind to reset the loop. When someone speaks, and you feel reactivity rising, place attention on your lower abdomen, exhale there. You'll notice your response soften before words leave your mouth. When uncertainty appears, take one oval breath, inhale smoothly through the nose, exhale through slightly parted lips and silently repeat, I observe this, therefore it cannot define me. You don't need to carve an hour to practice. Every moment is practice. The breath is portable sacred geometry. One conscious breath while waiting in line or before answering a message can retune your entire field. Over time, the body begins to associate awareness with safety instead of survival. The nervous system rewrites its memory of the world not as threat, but as space. Notice that we haven't added anything new. We've only shifted how you relate to what already is. That's the observer's true art. Transformation through presence, not addition. When you breathe like this, your cells start to mirror the pattern of the breath, organized, rhythmic, luminous. You become a stable frequency through which life flows coherently. Take one more cycle together. Inhale, light enters. Pause, the world suspends. Exhale, release into stillness. Feel the faint pulse under your skin, the quiet expansion of your chest, the peace that follows awareness like a shadow. This is coherence you can live inside. Next, we'll explore what happens when you carry this awareness into real situations, money, love, leadership, where the loop tries to return. That's where you'll learn the turning point, shifting from victim of circumstance to creator of coherence. You've felt the stillness, now the small pause where everything waits for your noticing. But awareness alone isn't the destination, it's the bridge. The real transformation begins when you bring this stillness into motion, when you let coherence walk into the noisy, unscripted theater of your life. Most people live as reactors. Something happens, and they respond automatically, convinced the trigger came first. But when you begin observing from the inside, you realize The event is neutral until your state defines it. You are not reacting to the world, you are reacting to your interpretation of it. And interpretation is the painter's brush on the canvas of experience. This is where the shift from victim to creator occurs. A victim is bound by circumstance, waiting for the scene to change. A creator rearranges meaning, and by doing so, changes the scene itself. Stillness is no longer an escape. It becomes your operating system. Let's apply it to 3 worlds you already know. Scene 1, money. You open your banking app and feel the pulse quicken, the breath shorten. The mind whispers, not enough. That whisper isn't data, it's a field distortion. Pause. 1 slow inhale through the nose, 1 unforced exhale through the mouth. Watch what happens when you don't feed the narrative. Numbers stop carrying emotional voltage. They become information, not identity. In that moment, you're not the sum of your accounts. You're the consciousness measuring flow. When coherence enters finance, creativity returns. Ideas arrive, solutions align, opportunities show up that scarcity once blinded you to. The field mirrors clarity, not panic. Scene 2, relationship. Someone you love misunderstands you. The old pattern wants to defend. The chest tightens, the voice lifts. But now you've practiced. You feel the constriction as information. You breathe once slow, deliberate, and listen not to the words, but to the energy underneath. Instead of reacting, you observe the rising heat within yourself and let it breathe. Something remarkable happens. Compassion floods in. The observer sees both sides at once. You're not diminishing your truth. You're expanding your awareness to include theirs. That expansion dissolves conflict faster than argument ever could. The field interprets this coherence as unity, and unity attracts resolution. Scene 3, leadership. Whether you manage a team, a family, or simply your own days, leadership is the practice of presence in motion. Chaos arrives, deadlines, opinions, pressure. Everyone looks outward for control. You look inward for coherence. 1 breath, 1 pause, 1 silent acknowledgement. I am the still point within the storm. You speak from that stillness, and suddenly the room recalibrates. People sense order without being told. True authority doesn't come from volume, it comes from frequency. When you stabilize your internal field, you become the anchor others unconsciously trust. Across all scenes, the pattern repeats. The trigger remains, but the meaning shifts. And when meaning shifts, probability shifts. This is creation in real time. The world reorganizes itself not around what you demand, but around what you embody. The victim says, I can't help how I feel. The creator says, my feeling is feedback. One collapses possibility, the other opens it. And here's the paradox. Creation doesn't require control, it requires consent. You consent to awareness guiding action rather than emotion dictating it. You let coherence make decisions. This turning point is where your life becomes participatory. You stop chasing alignment and start living as alignment. You understand that coherence doesn't mean constant calm. It means consistent awareness. Even anger, grief, or uncertainty can move through you without corruption if observed consciously. The field doesn't judge the emotion, it reads the signal beneath it. If the signal is awareness, it translates to power. You might wonder, does this mean I'll never be triggered again? No. It means when you are, you'll know the way back. You'll sense the contraction as a bell, not a cage. Each trigger becomes another opportunity to refine frequency. This is mastery, to remain aware while moving through imperfection. From here, creation feels less like effort and more like music. You begin to live in rhythm with what's unfolding instead of marching against it. You don't control reality, you conduct it. The notes of your experience start responding to your coherence. You notice synchronicities replacing struggle, timing replacing tension, flow replacing force. Pause for a moment now. Think of one area where you felt powerless. Bring it to mind gently, not as a wound but as a doorway. Feel the body's reaction, then breathe until that reaction loosens its grip. The moment it does, notice how perception widens. That widening is creation. That's the field reorganizing around new observation. This is the inflection point, the passage between unconscious existence and conscious participation. You're not escaping the human experience. You're refining it. And that refinement is the quiet revolution of our age. In the next part, we'll draw the lens wider to see how this shift redefines dignity, belonging, and meaning itself. We'll explore how stillness, practiced privately, becomes a public art that ripples through culture. Because every coherent observer doesn't just change their life, they change the world's frequency around them. There comes a point when practice dissolves into presence, when you're no longer doing coherence, you're simply being coherent. That's when the ordinary world starts to look different. The same street, the same faces, the same challenges, but they feel newly illuminated, as if someone adjusted the light. What changed wasn't the scenery, it was the observer. You've stepped out of the loop, and suddenly life feels participatory again. This is where the deeper understanding emerges. Stillness isn't withdrawal. It's participation without distortion. It's what the ancients called the middle way, the Egyptians called balance, and the physicists call equilibrium. In essence, it's dignity awareness expressing itself with grace under gravity. When you meet life from stillness, you begin to sense that meaning isn't something to be hunted down. It's something that unfolds when you stop resisting what's already here. Consider this. The universe doesn't argue. It expands. It doesn't justify its existence. It simply continues to create. You carry that same signature. Beneath every doubt, beneath every self-criticism, there's a quiet certainty that you belong to something vast. The observer is that certainty made conscious, the part of you that knows your worth without needing validation. When you look at another human being from that awareness, something softens. You no longer see competition or threat. You see reflection. Their fear mirrors your forgotten fear. Their beauty mirrors your own. Coherence becomes compassion in motion. That's the invisible art form that changes cultures faster than any revolution, the way one steady heart field can steady a room, a family, even a city. Think of stillness as public art. You don't need to hang it on walls. You embody it in traffic, in meetings, in the grocery line. Every calm exhale, every pause before a reaction, every moment you choose presence over performance adds coherence to the collective field. Others feel it, even if they can't name it. They breathe easier around you without knowing why. The world recalibrates through micro moments of awareness, shared in silence. This is what true agency feels like. Power without aggression, clarity without superiority. You begin to act not from, "What do I get?" but from, "What wants to happen through me?" Action becomes an extension of alignment, not a substitute for it. That's how leadership, artistry, parenting, friendship, all of it transforms into service. And in those rare moments when life collapses, grief, failure, loss, you remember the deeper rhythm. Coherence doesn't eliminate sorrow. It dignifies it. You can feel pain without becoming pain. You can stand in uncertainty without being consumed by it. The observer doesn't run from the storm. It becomes the calm within it. That calm is not indifference, it's compassion wide enough to include everything. When you live this way, humility and confidence stop being opposites. You see that being part of everything is the same as being small within it. The wave doesn't apologize to the ocean. It expresses it. Each breath you take becomes an act of belonging. Each silence becomes an act of faith. You start realizing that the highest intelligence in the universe might not be complexity at all. It might be simplicity held with love. A tree photosynthesizing sunlight. A child's laughter cutting through noise. A human sitting quietly, eyes open, breathing with awareness. These are not minor acts. They're the architecture of coherence, sustaining life itself. And here's the quiet gift. When you become this kind of stillness, you no longer crave proof that you matter. Existence itself becomes the proof. Every inhale is permission. Every exhale is gratitude. You understand that presence is participation in the divine experiment, the field learning to see itself through human eyes. As you move forward from this point, remember that awareness is contagious. Your coherence won't announce itself, but it will ripple through every person you meet, every space you enter. You are not responsible for saving the world. You are responsible for staying coherent within it. The rest follows naturally. In the final part, we'll close the circle with a brief ritual to anchor this awareness into action. 3 coherent breaths, 1 word, and a simple declaration that turns stillness into a living frequency. Because transformation isn't complete until it's spoken into existence. Take a moment to slow everything down. Wherever you are seated, standing, or lying in the dark, feel the gentle gravity that holds you. Let the edges of the room soften. Let time loosen its grip. For the next few breaths, nothing is required of you. Nothing to achieve, nothing to fix. Just awareness breathing itself. Now, let's begin the ritual, the simplest act of coherence. 3 breaths. 1 word. 1 declaration. First breath. Inhale gently through your nose. Feel the air touch the back of your throat, expanding your chest. Hold it for a heartbeat. This is the bridge. Exhale softly through your mouth, like mist on a mirror. As you breathe out, release the day, the roles, the striving, the noise. Second breath. Inhale again, this time deeper. Let it rise from the base of your spine, through the heart, to the crown of your head. Hold briefly. Notice the observer, steady, quiet, witnessing. Exhale slowly, letting the body melt into the support beneath it. You are both movement and stillness, both wave and shore. Third breath. Inhale, sensing the entire field breathing with you, the air, the light, the unseen rhythm that connects everything. Hold the breath in the space of reverence. Exhale with gratitude. Feel how the air leaving your body doesn't disappear. It joins the atmosphere, mingling with every other breath on this planet. That's how unity feels. Effortless. Now, choose a single word that embodies the state you wish to carry forward. Maybe it's peace, maybe truth, clarity, freedom, compassion. Whatever arises first is correct. Whisper it quietly, or let it rest unspoken in the center of your chest. Then, speak the declaration aloud or silently, so the field can register it. I choose to, your word, as the observer. Feel the sentence land not as aspiration, but as identity. You are no longer chasing coherence. You are coherence declaring itself. This is how transformation stabilizes, not through striving, but through gentle remembrance repeated often. Whenever life pulls you into reaction, return here. 3 breaths, 1 word, 1 sentence. It's enough to recalibrate your entire field. As you finish, bring one hand to your heart. Feel the pulse that's been with you through every change, every challenge, every awakening. That rhythm is your proof you've never truly been separate from the source that moves worlds. Now, lift your gaze. Imagine millions of others breathing in sync somewhere across the planet, different cities, different languages, same awareness awakening through them. You are part of that coherence, a node in a vast living network of consciousness remembering itself. If this experience has resonated, if something in you recognizes truth in these words, then stay connected not just to this channel, but to this frequency. The field expands through shared awareness. Subscribe to this frequency, not as entertainment, but as participation in the quiet revolution of consciousness unfolding across the planet. Every time you return, every time you breathe consciously with us, the signal grows stronger. Stillness spreads, the world steadies. So, before you move on with your night, pause once more. Feel the hum between your heartbeat and the hum of existence. That's the observer. That's the test passed. You've stepped through the threshold. Welcome back to the moment before midnight, where creation begins again, through you.